Hello, welcome to the channel, Flesh to the Father. In today's video, I'm going to be explaining how to get closer to God and also to enjoy your own spiritual path. Let's go. Okay, now a few people have asked me how to get closer to God, and I'm only speaking obviously from my own personal spiritual journey. And in the first part of this video, I'm going to explain my experiences. And in the second part, I'm going to be explaining why you should also enjoy your own spiritual journey. Okay, so when someone asks me, how do I get closer to God? I would explain to them that God is obviously spirit. It's not a man in the sky. It's a spirit, and we are children of God, meaning that we are literally spirits. Deep within us, our actual real identity is the awareness, the conscience, the spirit, observing our ego, our thoughts. So we're not actually the physical body. It's just the vehicle that carries around our spirit and our awareness. So first, we have to understand and realize that within ourselves. And if you start off from not understanding the true nature of God and the true nature of yourself, then you're not going to be able to get closer to the truth. Now we understand that we and God is spirit. We have to understand to get closer to God, we have to get closer to the spirit rather than the flesh and the ego. So how do we do that? Well, obviously there's multiple ways. The best way, or two of the best ways, is meditation and fasting, because naturally when you meditate, and meditate, the true meaning of meditation, I've got a video coming on out on this soon. True meaning of meditation is also prayer, is sitting in silence and becoming aware of your spirit within, which is the awareness. So you realize that once you start observing your thoughts, you realize that you are not your thoughts, you are not your ego, you're the awareness behind the thoughts. And once you awaken to that truth, that inner truth you knew when you were a child, that's when you return home and you return to the Father, you return to the Spirit. And when you're in that state of awareness, then you are closer to God. And also, when you fast, you're releasing yourselves from earthly physical bonds, and then you're getting closer to the Spirit. So if you just don't eat any food for 24, 36 hours, you'll just start to release some of those bonds. And it's not something I can tell you intellectually. It's something you have to experience yourself, and it will be a gradual thing. For me personally, I didn't have any great epiphany. It wasn't some magical thing that happened. It was just a slow process. And I think the Bible tries to explain it as a mustard seed. Once you have that inner realization that you're a spirit, that is being born again that Jesus talked about. And then you're like a mustard seed, you're like a baby in the spirit, and then you start to grow. So my spiritual journey started 15 years ago. And when I awakened to the fact I was a spirit, maybe 10 years ago, I've been growing and learning and evolving ever since I initially awoke. And essentially, getting closer to God is anything that feeds your spirit rather than feeds your ego of the flesh. So that's why my channel is called Flesh to the Father. It's going from the flesh to the spirit. And the way I see it is how to get closer to God. I don't ever feel like I'm literally having any kind of relationship or communication from God. It's more of a innate knowing of my true nature and the true nature of God. Okay, it's nothing crazy magical that I've ever experienced. It's just a realization of the truth within myself. And I always knew it when I was a kid. I remember being really young and I just started thinking, why are people in this world so crazy? Why do people hate? Why are people violent? Why do people have a lack of love? And that was obviously my spirit being aware. But then as you grow older, you slightly lose contact with that. And being reconnected to the Father, Roy Masters explained it perfectly. It's like the situation, let's say you went to school with someone and you can't remember their name. And let's say your friend's name in school was John, or this guy in school was named John when you were a kid. And you're speaking to your friends now, and they're like, oh, what was that kid? What was his name? What was his name? And you can't remember it yourself. But then one of your friends goes, his name was John. That's John. And then you realize, yes, of course it was John. So you always knew his name was John, but you couldn't quite remember it. And it's the same thing that happens when you return to the true Father and the true love of God. It's that inner remembering. So that knowing I had when I was a kid, once I stumbled upon the truth again, it was an aha moment. It was a remembering. So it wasn't anything magical. It was something very subtle, but truly of the truth. And it's not something that you could intellectually understand by reading a Bible or whatever. It was something within me. And now when I read the Bible and understand Jesus, it confirms that inner knowing. Okay, so that is how I would explain it. And as I said, the second part of my video is to enjoy your own journey. See, when I speak of these things, I'm speaking of things that I've experienced and that I have learnt. But everybody has their own journey, and you should never listen and just base your spiritual journey on other people. And that's the problem with religion. People just go, I'm going to become a Christian, I'm going to become a Muslim, I'm going to follow these traditions, but that blocks your soul's journey to understand and to know the truth. And even, there's another good thing that Roy Masters says. He said to his people who listen to him, I don't want you to become a Roy bot. Now, for me, I already awakened to the truth. And when I heard Roy Masters, I liked Roy Masters because he intellectually explained it in a way that confirmed my already inner knowing. But what I noticed with some people who followed him was they hadn't already achieved the inner knowing themselves. So they would just believe in what Roy Masters said, and he would get frustrated because they were just intellectually saying what he said, but they didn't truly understand within themselves. They hadn't realized the truth. And he called them Roybots because they were just repeating what he says. And that's why I call Christians like the Bible thumpers, because they're just saying things, but they haven't had that inner revelation, that inner realization. And this is most probably why Jesus Christ was persecuted, because all the Pharisees and religious people at the time talked a good game, but he knew that they didn't have that inner knowing. They didn't have the returning to the Father. They just spoke words to seem righteous, but as he said, they were dirty from the inside, but clean on the outside. But the goal is to become clean on the inside, and then it will show on the outside. So I would advise people, enjoy your own spiritual path and go along your own journey. And there's a book called Siddhartha that is well worth a read. And it was something that when I started spiritually awakening, and then I came to know Christ, I realized that both things were beautiful. I think the Eastern one was good because it spiritually awakened me somewhat, but then learning about Christ taught me about returning to the Father and the love of God. And Jesus' example of how he lived his life is the nature of God, perfect love. And then in Siddhartha, if you want to read the book and you don't want it ruined, probably stop the video now. But in Siddhartha, the book, it's around a Buddhist monastery. And Siddhartha, if I can remember correctly, this is roughly it. Siddhartha was planning on becoming a monk and going and meditating all day and becoming a Buddhist. But he decided to take a different path. And he went and lived his life. So he got married, he had kids, he did businesses, he did all this stuff. And then at the end of his journey, he achieved his own awakening. And he went back to the Buddhist monastery. I think this is the rough idea. He went back to the monastery and he realized that he attained far more enlightenment than a lot of the Buddhists who were just sitting around meditating all day. And he achieved that magic inner knowing. And I believe that Siddhartha achieved returning to Christ and returning to the Father and understanding the true love, whereas the other Buddhists didn't really achieve that through meditating. And I think the point of the story is to enjoy your spiritual journey, and that there are different paths to awakening. You know, for example, I've had my journey, which is similar to a lot of others, but then you'll have people who have a near-death experience and they'll die, they'll go up into the spirit, they'll say they've communicated with God. There's multiple different versions, but that will change them and get them to have an awakening in a different way. And that's their journey, that's their path, or however it is for them. And to finish it off, I'll say with when you're on your spiritual journey, always be cautious. Don't trust anyone completely. But also don't get stuck in a dogma. Have an open mind. So have an open mind, but always be wary because there's lots of fakes and frauds out there and we're all learning. People will do videos like myself. There's loads of people doing videos and we may have a current position, but then in a few years we may learn and evolve and change our positions. And I think the most important thing is not that you're always going to get things right, but you have the right intentions. And God sees, because God is spirit and he sees through our spirit and our conscience, when we're living right with our conscience, we're good because we're doing things, even though there's some things that I may be saying now that are complete and utter rubbish, but my intentions are absolutely righteous. There's no ill intentions behind what I'm doing. And if I'm teaching wrong things, my intentions are right. And that's the most important thing to God. You know, God would rather you say something slightly wrong with good intentions than you say certain truths, but with bad intentions. Okay, so that's my personal point of view on these subjects. If you have any comments, place them below on your spiritual journeys or any views you may have. If you like the video, like it. If you're new here, subscribe for more, and God bless everyone. Goodbye.